Welcome to another human-read audiobook by the United Marxist Pact Discord server, link below in the description. In this series, we continue our investigation into the initial construction, the organizational structure, and the principles and tactics of the form of worker organization capable of seizing political power and establishing the revolutionary proletarian dictatorship and communality, which can in turn produce the communist mode of production through the shared class interests of the workers of the entire world. Our goal is to compile, analyze, and elaborate on what all of these texts have to say about this, and at the end have a strong understanding of the exact scientific process of it, particularly in general terms. At the end of our readings as a whole, we will try to put it all together and present it as a coherent whole in an educational video with associated notations. Today's reading will be the 1974 Honorado Damen Axioms of Revolutionary Theory and Practice. We have a pre-written textual analysis on the terms of the aforementioned topics, which is also posted in the pinned comment if you prefer to read in text, or follow the link in the description to a read-only version of my Google Docs notes. This will summarize the contents of the text, but is no replacement for the actual reading itself for the sake of understanding the context and full content of the piece. In addition, in the reading, I supply my own commentary, critiques, additions, etc., which may be helpful for understanding some particularities. I do not write down things that are repetitious or I feel are completely inapplicable. So let's get right into it. In contrast to the ICP's conception, which only views members of the party as proletarians and thereby the party as a one-to-one tautological circle party proletarian, this text recognizes the dialectical link between the class party and the class, where neither is above the other. Rather, the party is part of the class as a substructure. This substructure, a minority, is the most ideologically and politically advanced, the most advanced on a class basis, and is international in character, holding a connection to a worldwide proletariat. From within the class, it guides and motivates the class. The party develops tactics and program, fundamentals, to achieve overall objectives, and these fundamentals are found through historical experience and analysis of engagement with the current class condition as a whole, with a link to previously learned path. In order to develop these, the party needs to allow criticism to build the program and set rules of political behavior. This program and these rules in turn allow the party to itself to exist, and the proletariat to act as a historical class and a fighting organization, and act with doctrinal consciousness. In addition, the conception of the dictatorship of the party replacing or being synonymous with the dictatorship of the proletariat is rejected, as it breaks down the dialectical relations between the class and the party and removes the ability of the class to take class action and develop from the dictatorship to socialism. One such example of this breakdown of dialectical relations is organic centralism as practiced currently. In its refutation of democracy or the consultation of the proletariat, it trends towards a break with the class. Democratic centralism, in comparison, creates continuity of class content based on democratic relationships in the context of strict centralization, which limits the ability of the class to express itself, creates a dialectical relationship between the democracy, as opposed to a class, and the class dictatorship. In such circumstances, when the state dissolves, democracy itself becomes actually possible. It is on this basis that social society is expressed and materially constructed. It necessarily involves the total social involvement of the class at all levels of the dictatorship. However, a party dictatorship, as opposed to a class dictatorship, does not have such involvement in reality. Instead, orders come from above, revolutionary discipline is administered, and engagement by the rank and file in decision making, democracy, is suppressed. Such fantasies of party dictatorship and the conception of the party as above the class allows for the view that individuals within the party can have special knowledge, emerging from the belief that those in the party cannot have those in the party and out of the party cannot have class knowledge, to engage in the Marxist methodology and pushing out all others. This develops into a conception of hierarchy of individual beneath the economically organized worker, beneath the party member, beneath the party leadership, which in turn produces the conception that the leadership is the only one capable of engaging in critical analysis of current conditions. This, of course, results in a need for the ICP realizing the ideological corner they have painted themselves in to demand that no one engage in theoretical development, as a negatory way to halt the development of this conception. In reality, the party needs to actually analyze why it is unable to understand the dynamics of the working class, rather than sticking its head in the sand and saying, "Stop the development." This requires an understanding of the contradictions within the working class itself and dialectically engaging them. It requires dialectical centralism. And now I will begin the full audiobook reading. This will explain the full text that is being summarized here in such a way that you will be able to understand what and why was extracted from it. I hope that you enjoyed the whole full reading. This is Honorado Damen's Axioms of Revolutionary Theory and Practice, written in 1974. Okay. The nature and tasks of the Revolutionary Party is a problem covering a vast and turbulent area where the proletariat struggle as capitalism's class enemy begins and unfolds. But the fundamental interests of the proletariat are not always taken into account when addressing this problem, and a positive contribution to the development of revolutionary theory has therefore not always been made. In this analysis, we aim to put together a factual, albeit limited, overview of the theoretical positions that we consider as most characteristic of the left spectrum, which is currently agitated by a plethora of self-styled quote-unquote left groups. These are hard to understand due to their improvised and superficial character. They sometimes make errors when, claiming to be objective, they approach the original sources of more qualified and responsible writers to use for their own ends. It was not easy to bring order to the jumbled and sometimes contradictory positions on the role of the party and the relationship between the party and class, given the theoretical dysfunction that has affected most of the groups that claim to be the revolutionary left, including the Italian left, considered as a whole. Is the ideological and political theory, in which we believe and for which we fight, in crisis over the historical role of the Revolutionary Party, as was conceived by the Bolsheviks at the time of Lenin and Trotsky? Certainly not, but bear one thing in mind, namely, that in the minds of many there has gradually been emerging a feeling of vague dissatisfaction, and from there a certain impression of decline of the role of the party as a permanent working class body, as an indispensable factor for revolutionary action. This has happened for two reasons. The first is the end of the revolutionary wave and the counter-revolutionary transformation of Soviet Russia, which occurred without producing obvious class confrontation and violence, but through an internal process of economic and social osmosis, which is not easy to understand. The second being the banal identification of Leninism with Stalinism, as if it was a historical continuation in a different phase of the Bolshevik Party. The Italian left has to be credited with being the first to critically address the inherent problems regarding the party and their implications. We remain clear that the central point remains valid, and any deviations are a result of inaccurate statements on the one hand, or due to the predominance of the cell poison of a polemic inclined towards paradox, just to assert intellectual distinction on the other. We will provide some specific references by way of demonstration going back more than 50 years to the specific history of the Revolutionary Party, in which the Italian left was almost always an opposition current that had to overcome the enormous difficulties all revolutionary minorities encounter. The relationship between the party and class is dialectically linked, with both on the same level, as placing special emphasis on neither the party nor on the class. We see the party as a part of the whole, the class. It is certainly the most aware, most prepared, most ideologically and politically willing, in short, the most advanced part of the class, which has the task of guiding and motivating the class itself. Speaking of the different phases that mark the historical process, Borda asks himself in Lenin on the Path of Revolution 1924, footnote, this is the title of the lecture Borda gave in Casa del Popolo, Rome on February 1924. Do we have that? I'm not sure. It sounds familiar though. I wish you would just give the title rather than or no, on a path of revolution. No, I don't think that we read that. Um, Quote, what separates them? Between the state of the bourgeoisie and the proletariat, there can only be the culmination of a revolutionary struggle, which the working class is guided by the Communist Political Party, which achieves victory after demolishing the armed forces of bourgeois power and establishes the new revolutionary power. Repeating this argument, the same year in the journal Prometeo, Communism and a National Question, in 1924, did we do that? Probably not. Okay. Bordiga wrote, quote, in short, this interest is the interest of the proletarian revolution. That is, the interest of the proletariat considered as a world class endowed with unity and historical tasks, which tend to a revolutionary goal, the downfall of the bourgeois order. We can and must solve particular problems in terms of this overall goal. The way to combine the individual solutions to this overall objective is realized in the fundamentals acquired by the party, which are the mainstays of its program and tactical methods. These fundamentals are not revealed immutable dogmas, but are themselves a result of the general and systematic examination of the situation of all human society in the current historical period, in which we must take into account all the elements that emerge from our experience. We do not deny that this examination progresses continuously and that the conclusions it reaches are progressively elaborated. But the truth is, we could not exist as a world party if the historical experience through which the proletariat has already passed does not allow our criticism to build a program, a set of rules of political behavior. We could not exist without it. Neither we as a party nor the proletariat as a historical class with a doctrinal consciousness and a fighting organization. It is in these terms, devoid of any traces of intellectualism, though we cannot prove it, that the left, through the hard work of building the Communist Party of Italy and its leadership, became more perceptive and mature and was able to express here, through Bordiga, the relationship which is not in any way formal that should exist between the class party and the class itself. Okay. So essentially it's making the distinction here. So you have this where Bordiga talks about the separation between the party, wherein the party is essentially over the masses. Whereas in this later, in the same year, Bordiga is like, okay, yeah, the role of the proletariat as a class is central to the development of the party and the ability of the party to take action and stuff, rather than outside and above it. So we're going to let's see. We're going to add this. Gosh, we're just going to add the entire thing. This is going to be annoying. Okay, so the class party and class itself are dialectically linked, and neither is above the other. The party is part of the class, a substructure. This substructure, as a minority, is the most ideologically, politically advanced. It's international and worldwide. It guides and motivates the class from within it. The party develops tactics and program fundamentals to achieve overall objectives. And these fundamentals are found through engagement with the current class condition as a whole, with a link to the previously learned path. The program needs to allow criticism to build a program, a set of rules of political behavior. Its program, these rules allow the party to exist, and the proletariat to act in the following ways: as a historical class, with doctrinal consciousness, and as a fighting organization. In other words, the party needs to actually develop and not just say, "Oh, you'll figure it out. Just follow your class interests. You'll figure it out." No. If you want to figure it out, you need to learn from the past, and that involves an adoption of previously learned experiences to the current. Continuing. In this regard, we reproduce here several formulations that seek to define the nature of the party and its tasks with regard to the class. They range from the Communist Manifesto, 1948, to 1925, and although they reflect different situations of class conflict, this does not diminish their value. First, the extract from the Communist Manifesto. So we actually have all these, but sure, we'll reread them. We're not going to copy them over. Thereupon the workers began to form combinations, trade unions, against the bourgeoisie. They clubbed together in order to keep up the rate of wages. They found permanent associations in order to make provisions beforehand for these occasional revolts. Now and then the workers are victorious, but only for a time. The real fruit of their battle lies not in the immediate result, but in the ever-expanding union of the workers. This union is helped on by the improved means of communication that are created by the modern industry, and that place the workers of different localities in contact with one another. It was just this contact that was needed to centralize the numerous local struggles, all of the same character, into one national struggle, understood as the struggle extending over the entire territory of the state before going on to the international level, between classes. But every class struggle is a political struggle. In that union, the modern proletariat achieved in a few years. This organization of the proletarians into a class and consequently into a political party is continually being upset by the competition between the workers themselves. Because, you're in competition for wages and for work and so on and so forth, right? But it ever rises again stronger, firmer, mightier. Further, as we have already seen, entire sections of the ruling class are, by the advance of industry, precipitated into the proletariat, or at least threatened in their conditions of existence. These also supply the proletariat with fresh elements of enlightenment and progress. Finally, in times when the class struggle nears the decisive hour, the progress of dissolution going on within the ruling class, in fact within the whole range of old society, assumes such a violent, glaring character that a small section of the ruling class cuts itself adrift and joins the revolutionary class, the class that holds the future in its hands. And footnote. This English translation is taken from the MIA and seems to differ quite substantially from the Italian used by Damen. For example, there's no mention of trade unions as permanent organizations in the Italian version. The bracketed insert comment is by Damen. Essentially saying, hey, look, when we're talking about national struggle, we mean develop on national level until finally you can go international. Okay. Extract from the Theses of the Second Congress of the Communist International on the tasks of the Communist Party and the Proletarian Revolution. The party is only distinguished from the great mass of workers by the fact that it considers the historical mission of the working class as a whole, and strives along the way not to defend the interests of any one group or trade, but of the whole of the working class. Extracts from the Statutes of the Communist Party of Italy, adopted unanimously at the founding Congress of Livorno. Quote, the indispensable organ for the revolutionary struggle of the proletariat is a class political party. The Communist Party, which brings together the most advanced and conscious part of the proletariat, unifies the efforts of the working masses, leading them for the struggles for particular interest and immediate gains to struggle for the emancipation of the proletariat. Extract from the Points of the Left of the Committee of Entente, 1925. These points of the left, although a schematic first draft, do not say anything different from the previously well-known fundamental text. Quote, the party is a body which unifies the outbursts of individuals and groups provoked by the class struggle. As such, party organizations should put themselves above particular categories and synthesize the various elements emanating from disparate categories of proletarians, peasants, and deserters from the bourgeois class, etc. So, footnote taken from the CWO, Communist Workers Marxist Communist Workers Organization from the UK. Pamphlet Platform of the Communist Intesa, 1925, subtitled The Start of the Italian Left's Fight Against Stalinism as Fascism Increases Its Grip. Okay. And to note here, they're not saying that the party is above the class. What they're saying here is that the party puts themselves above particular categories of the class rather than. Yeah, so if we understand it as a drawing board online, sketchpad, sure. What the hell? Okay, so go away. So if we understand, here's the class as a whole, right? We're just gonna say class. I'm not gonna write shit. And then within this class, you've got all these different class organizations, unions here. You've got activist groups here, feminist groups there, and so on and so forth. The Communist Party seeks to essentially say, okay, all you guys get together within me, and even though we're a minority within the class, the goal is to bring all these and put their partial interests together. No, the Communist Party does not say ignore wages, ignore feminism, ignore all these stuff. It says all these things are connected struggles and you need to get on board within the Communist Party in order to deal with it. Because eventually this Communist Party could potentially fill up this entire space if it manages to get all the different disparate aspects. Okay. Continuing. But it also pushes out the various bourgeois ideologies and stuff that the proletariat pick up. The pay bourgeois ideologies and so on and so forth. Extract from the Rome Theses, 1922. Quote, 1. In its activity, the Communist Party, the political party of the working class, is a collective that works as a unified whole. The initial impulses that lead the elements and groups of this collective to organize for unified action are the immediate interests that economic conditions provoke within the working class. A key function of the Communist Party is the use of its accumulated energies to achieve objectives, which, by being common to the entire working class, at the end of an entire series of struggles, go beyond the interests of particular groups and the immediate demands that arise in the working class. Doesn't say that ignores it. It says it goes beyond. So it says, okay, you have your immediate strike and stuff. Cool. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Also connected to every other struggle. Keep going. Continuing. 2. The integration of all elementary impulses into unified action is manifested by the two main factors, one of which is the critical consciousness from which the party draws its program. The other is a will that is expressed through the disciplined, centralized organization within which the party acts. It would be wrong to consider these two factors, consciousness and will, as powers that can be obtained or claimed by individuals, since they are only obtained by integrating the activity of many individuals within a unitary collective body. And we can think about that in terms of a superorganism or something along those lines with emergent characteristics. The individual ant, right, can't do much. In fact, it's unable to determine much of anything about circumstances. But emergent from the very movement of the ant colony itself and the various interplays within it comes a coherent action by the whole of them all at once. I don't normally recommend this, but Kurzagat actually has a fairly good video on this. And I'm sure other places talk about probably better, but perhaps not as great in terms of quality of the actual animation demonstrating it. Anyway, in this historical sketch, the definition of the party and the party-class relationship is unambiguous, but in the 20s, it was expressed differently, as in the brief interval from Livorno until the promulgation of the exceptional laws, footnote After the failure of the parliamentary opposition tactic of the Aventine withdrawal, the fascist government decreed the abolition of opposition parties and unions. Between 1925 to 26, created a secret political force, OVRA, and a special tribunal for the defense of the state, banned strikes and lockouts, and only recognized the fascist unions. Back to the text. Which forced the party underground. These are the terms of a platform that was the unifying basis of the Italian left, and by which we have always been recognized. It is on this supreme theoretical and political line that our party consolidated the pillars of the doctrine and political coherence of the revolutionary left. Okay, so basically they're saying that this is the continual line, and this is the fully developed line here. But then after we went on the retreat and essentially we lacked the ability to organize effectively due to the fascist counteroffensive, essentially the conception of the party and its relation to the class broke down, right? If this is a theoretical constant that has characterized our current, we have to go back to a particularly significant article by Bordiga in which it is true that he did not go so far as to question the essence of this theoretical constant, but he was able, by the way he expressed himself so absolutely, to give rise to erroneous, arbitrary, and narrow interpretations of it, as in fact happened. We are talking here about the article Party and Class Action, in which we can already discern the contradictory theme that has accompanied the personality of Bordiga and been so fruitful for the work of his usual followers, with whom Bordiga never had any luck. And we did indeed read Party and Class and Party and Class Action. We actually had a long reading of this, and I believe I remember critiquing this exact part. I might be wrong, but I certainly feel like I remember critiquing it. But there was a lot of very good stuff in it too. Anyway, let's see what Damen has to say here. The article states, quote, "One cannot speak of a class as a historical movement where there is no party that acts as the vanguard of this movement. The party is the indispensable organ of all class action, and therefore logically one cannot speak of a true class action, i.e., beyond the limits of sectional interests or small immediate problems, where there is no party activity." End quote. This way of expressing himself, somewhat vague and deliberately abstruse, gives rise to various interpretations, thus opening up a road along which others could travel at will under the illusion of completing the thinking. Whether the conclusion contradicted the premise itself mattered little, as was the case of the dictatorship of the proletariat. Yes, this is a key thing that This inevitable historical outcome was converted with the stroke of the pen into the dictatorship of the party. Yes, this is a continual thing that remains from there all the way down to our most recent reading up here, Reunion at Naples. And it's also going to show up here as well, which is essentially what we've been doing, only they did it on themselves. It's a whole bunch of quotations and stuff. But yeah, it's this conception of the party, the class party, as the dictatorship of the proletariat. Okay, so this caution of expression is understandable, considering that we were in years immediately after Livorno when the left administered and led the party in which Bordiga had the greatest influence and responsibility. It was not until the 1951 theses, written by Bordiga, now detached from any discipline of revolutionary activity, to see how this tendency to weaken the links between the party and class were accentuated, with greater emphasis on the party than on the class. Quote, "As a party," he states, "alone and autonomously directs the struggle of the exploited class to bring down capitalism, it will also be the one to autonomously lead the state of the revolutionary proletariat." Is this not a clear denial of the validity to the dictatorship of the proletariat, as a class dictatorship exercised by the party to make way for the theory of a dictatorship of the party, that in reality cannot substitute itself for the class as the historical antagonist of capitalism? The class is forged historically, not just by acquiring a clear revolutionary consciousness of its revolutionary aim, but also through the preceding stage, where precisely because of the party's critical work in trying to win over the working class, it gradually, slowly, and painfully acquires its consciousness. Starting from mere corporatism and simple demand struggles, it becomes more united and mature in understanding its ideological, political, and organizational role as a revolutionary class. We have to go back to a small allusion made in the course of a dispute about organic centralism, a formula that Bordicka considered the best interpretation of Lenin and the parties of the Third International's democratic centralism, to understand this trend to authoritarian, ultimately extremely hierarchical relations, which lead to the worst Stalinism. In the Leninist conception, the dictatorship of the proletariat is equivalent to the presence and continuity of class content based on democratic relationships in the context of strict centralization of the dictatorship itself. Hence, the dialectical relationship between democracy and dictatorship. The fall of the state and class dictatorship will open a period of the widest and most complete exercise of proletarian democracy, through which social society will be expressed and materially constructed. This tendency to the total social involvement of the class, which is organized during the transitional stage in the very heart of the dictatorship, while foreshadowing the future as an active living factor, is part of the process of decline of the whole structure of authority, coercion, and the exercise of power. This tendency is absent in a party dictatorship, in which this dialectical relationship is in fact broken, to the extent that any decision is unilateral. Orders only come from above, and revolutionary discipline is administered, even in the pre-revolutionary phase by, for example, unique commissars. Footnote here, Damen is here referring to the internal organization of the International Communist Party, Il Programma Comunista, which Bordiga and Maffei formed after the split with the Internationalist Communist Party in 1952. Apparently, these unique commissars ran the individual sections of that party, transmitting to them the decisions of the executive committee. All for the sake of following a visceral anti-democratic passion. This leads, for example, to judging in a blinkered and police-like way, as if obeying personal ambitions, any contribution to theoretical developments that seek to deepen the critical understanding of particular phenomena originating from imperialist domination, that reflect capitalism in its advanced state of decomposition, using Marxist methods of research. We're going to get that further down later, but we're going to grab this right now. Lots of long paragraphs in this section. All right. So the concept of the dictatorship of the party replacing the dictatorship of the proletariat is one that breaks down the dialectical relations between class and party and removes the ability of the class to take class action and develop from the dictatorship to socialism. Organic centralism and its refutation of democracy trends towards a break with the class. Democratic centralism creates continuity of class content based on democratic relationships in the context of strict centralization. This limits the ability of the class to express itself, though. There becomes a dialectical relationship between the democracy and the class dictatorship. In such circumstances, when the state dissolves, democracy itself becomes actually possible. It is on this basis that social society is expressed, materially constructed. It necessarily involves the total social involvement of the class at all levels of the dictatorship. A party dictatorship does not have such an involvement in reality. Orders come from above, revolutionary discipline is administered, and democracy is suppressed, that is to say, engagement by the rank and file in decision making. Continuing. So let's reread paragraph 7 of part 4 of the Fundamental Theses, 1951, edited by Bordiga. Did we go through that? Maybe. It would be this one. Or maybe this one. I'm not sure. Or it was neither of them. Entirely possible. No movement can historically succeed without theoretical continuity, based on the experience of past struggles. Thus, a party prohibits personal freedom to develop new systems or explanations of the contemporary social world. We did read this. It prohibits individual freedom of analysis, critique, and perspective, including the most intellectually competent militia. and defends the soundness of a theory that is not a product of blind faith, but the content of the science of the proletarian class, built with the secular material that is not the result of men's thoughts, but the strength of the material facts which are reflected in the historical consciousness of a revolutionary class and crystallize in the party. Footnote. Like all quotes from Borga in this book, this is our own translation. The English translation of the fundamental theses of the party by the Bordegists themselves can be found at here, but is obviously by someone whose first language was not English. Back to the text. Clearly, this leads us to discriminate between the chosen few whom divine providence enables to develop theory on the one hand. Actually, in the text it says that they should basically nobody should be able to develop theory. Clearly, this leads us to discriminate between chosen few whom divine providence is enabled to develop theory on the one hand, and the many individuals who, unfortunately, do not enjoy the favors of providence and must therefore are not free to try to critically clarify the course of events using Marxist methods as a compass on the other. We must closely examine the effects produced by this way of conceiving Marxism, which hides under a layer of varnish its inability to follow the complex dynamics of the working class, with its ups and downs and sometimes contradictory vicissitudes, in the slow process of forming a consciousness of itself, and which lead it to break the ties that bound it to the most immediate interests of daily life. And that's the text. We're going to add this, but I'm also going to add the caveat that that essentially that this is an incorrect reading of what they had to say, on the grounds that they said that in this period of retreat with invariance and whatnot, essentially, nobody gets to develop theory, especially leaders in the party. So, but even still, this is true. I agree that people should be able to develop theory. Anyway, thank you for joining us. This was Axiom of Revolutionary Theory and Practice by Honorado Damen in 1974, and have a wonderful day.